where the coach really needs to understand what's going on in a player's head. And I finally made my breakthrough coming on for an injured player in late October, after arriving in preseason in August. And now, ever since then, I've been part of the core and started and played full games. And I've been playing as the 6 in a 4-4-2 diamond. And I think, Dusk helped prepare me for that breakthrough. As I talked about earlier, we do this winner stays on the field game in winter at Soccer Roof in Brooklyn all the time. One of Kevin's favorite games, where he puts a combination of players from different teams within the club, always with 1 to 2 age groups above or below. And it hurts so bad to lose there, because you're doing fitness on the field next door after you lose. No one wants to do that when they could be playing. So the desire for victory is so great, and you're forced to come out of your shell and communicate and bond with players from other teams within Dusk right away, or else you will fail. I mean, it's about seizing the opportunity right from the get-go, or you will not succeed. And I think I used some of that experience from Dusk when I got my break at St. Andrews. And finally, as I've mentioned a lot in this, Dusk made me adaptable. The sorts of kids at Dusk from various backgrounds with different personalities, the different coaches, you learn to manage that as a player for the club and how you interact with different characters. In that sense, the different backgrounds and mindsets prepared me to be ready in St. Andrews for the same sort of experience. And the Scottish coaching accents had been made slightly easier by having Matt and Paul Jeffrey as coaches. Only half kidding. I mean, this is the first few months. I had absolutely no clues half the time what my coaches were saying. Thick Glaswegian accent can be tough. But the next steps, I think, are taking things bit by bit and year by year, of course. But the goal is to play pro in Scotland or elsewhere in Europe. And my coaches at St. Andrews are well connected to pro clubs across Scotland. So hopefully, that's my goal. That's me.
Well, that is absolutely awesome, Sasha. And if I'd bet on anyone, I'd put my money on you that you'll have that opportunity. So thanks very much for that insight. And it's a great transition to topic 3, which is based on a lot of the questions from our Dusk players, which you addressed. And Matt, if you could take a couple of minutes addressing this. A lot of the players asked, what advice would you give Dusk players who want to play at higher levels, whether it's professionally or in college? And again, Sasha, I think, responded to that really well. But if you have a couple of follow-ups to that, it would be great.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thanks, Sash. It's great to see you and hear you again. Just a few notes. Yeah, I'm sure your crocodile tackle is fitting pretty well in Scotland. My accent, there's no way you can compare my accent to a Glaswegian accent, that's for sure. Okay. And it's great you mentioned some really good coaches. I know Kuba is on the call, and I definitely align with a lot of the things that I've seen his teams buy into over the time. So I'm glad you referenced him and Kevin and some other great people involved in the club. So just wanted to take note of that. So moving on to the last topic, which like Kevin said, flows quite nicely because it talks about players wanting to play at the highest level, professionally or in college. And every player's situation is completely unique, completely different. There's no one cap fits all. How many players would have done what Sasha's done? Sacrifice with potential college scholarship opportunity to play in a system that's well known. Just playing a system where there's a good established sporting system with training and games and stadiums, etc. To risk to go to the unknown. To go across to Scotland. Go across and play at a good level, and I'm sure it's very physical, it's very fast. The tackles are flying, like you alluded to, and it's promotion relegation. Every game counts, and Sasha was the unknown. He wasn't going like recruited, like he might have been in the US, and he had to figure it out. So once again, every situation is different. You cannot follow what someone else does because you might think that's the right way. So many players have gone to what they thought was the right place, but it was in essence the wrong place, and that's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to learn, and that's all part of the process. I decided to forego trying to play in England. I wasn't quite good enough to play at a high level, so I had to make a decision. And I don't regret my decision to come and play in the US. And my situation was different, and so I think, take into account all the pros and the cons, and what you might get at a so-called top Division 1 school, you might not get at another school. So don't always go to what seems like the biggest and best. I think it has to fit in many areas. And I know the college guidance stuff is very clued in and detailed at DUSC, so I know it covers a lot of areas. So, balance and support, in life is very important. I think to get to the next level and to get to reach your potential, and I've talked about this, and Sasha alluded to this, it's consistency, it's balance, it's the support. It's not just what's on the field, it's everything else. If you don't enjoy going to training because there's other things going on that are distracting you, or if the commute's too much, or you don't know your teammates, or you bounce around teams, or the travel and the cost is just wearing on you, which and this was another question that came up about the USDA. And for me, the amount of travel that's involved in the US Development Academy is absolutely ridiculous. When there's teams in the backyard, in your own backyard, you could play, and you could, a 30-minute commute as opposed to leaving on a Friday, staying in a hotel, traveling. And yeah, the players love it because they're on a bus at times, but if you're commuting with your parents, or if you're commuting in cars and carpools, it gets old. And the cost to do that, and the amount of travel involved, and the time away from the family, I think, and I saw, Claudia Reyna did an interview recently, and we touched on the same points. It has to be, things have to change, because it just doesn't make sense to try and travel the coast to coast and up and down the East Coast to find the next best thing to beat this different opponent. I think, balance, not just in soccer, but in life is important. Family, friends, social, all that stuff, kind of flows into it. So there's that aspect to think about. And then there's the dedication, desire to get to where you need to go. What are you doing before and after training? What are you doing? We call it invisible training. The rest and nutrition, the tough stuff, stuff that is hard. Not eating that In-N-Out burger, or choosing to drink something healthier than a soda, or all the little things that can add up over time. And the invisible training, I think, can go a long way, because how much time do you spend on the field with your team? Not that much, not compared to the time you spend off the field or on a year-round basis over many, many years. So I did actually a Q&A with Paul Clement last week, who coached, was the assistant coach of Real Madrid for Ancelotti, and he referenced Ronaldo, and he said Ronaldo's habits were like no other, and his dedication every single day was that he wanted to be the best ever of all time, not just the best right now, but a best of all time. So everything he did, to what he ate, to how he worked out, to how he trained like an animal. He referenced when they got back one time, it's 3:00 in the morning, they arrived back from a game, they got in the cars, 3 a.m. and they have to train tomorrow because they have a game coming up. And Ronaldo's disappeared off into the training facility, and he's grabbed a couple of his teammates, and the coach asked him, where are you going? It's 3:00 in the morning. And he was going to take an ice bath because he wanted to get his body right to prepare for the next day. There's no coincidences that these players are, the best players in the world. They have to do that. And there's references to players who didn't do that, who dropped off. But for the most part, every coach I've listened to or spoke to or read about, when they reference elite talent, world-class talent, it's what they do outside. It's the invisible training. So that takes a huge amount of sacrifice, mental resilience, the ability to make the right choices. And then you have to understand why, what's the reason you're doing this. So every situation, once again, is different. Being around good people is really important. Patience and consistency and trust in the process, I think is very important. Everyone's always looking for the next best thing in the society, and especially in the soccer youth landscape. And sometimes it's just right there. And I think, when I noticed at DUSC, and what I connected with the DUSC, is that there's some really good people involved. There's a really good coaching staff, the same NYCFC. And obviously, the difference between one being a pro club and one being a pay-to-play youth club, it's about being with the right people and having consistency and people with good values who are looking out for you. And, Sasha's team, that he talked about a little bit, they have some great personalities, and they were all from different backgrounds. And they had to deal with adversity. Like you said, sometimes, 3 teams on Chelsea Waterside Park, 1 goal, 7v7 goal, and some guys trying to play pickup behind you. That's not normal. It's not ideal. So how do you cope with that? How do you deal with that? And all these things can pay dividends when you have to deal with adversity. You have to learn from experience. Maybe you don't get selected, or you don't get picked, or you have an injury. How do you deal with that? So that can definitely pay into it. And then, once again, just like the ability to sacrifice, the little things over time. I know players that sacrifice, prom dates with girls so that they can, train or go with their team in a tournament, or go do a soccer experience, and others who haven't. And listen, these are all choices that people make. And how many of us are going? How many players are going to be professional players? Unfortunately, not many. But I think the journey of being youth soccer is something that can help you in every walk of life. That can help you in whatever professional environment or role you end up in. And maybe hopefully it's involved in the game. Now, I'm very lucky to still be connected with the game. Very lucky to still work and live in my passion, and the game is constantly evolving. So I think being in the right place and with the right people is paramount. And it's a slow process. It's a journey, and you have to take one step at a time. You can't think too far ahead. And then when you look back at the IDP I shared, that's why we broke it down, season by season, 1 to 3 year, but with a long-term goal in mind. But how do you get there? And without the short-term goals, the long-term goals, they're just it's impossible. And it's great to have a big goal, and a goal that's maybe out of reach. It's great to dream big, for sure. Everyone should dream big and try their best to get there. So, I hope that answers the question on what it takes to make it to the highest level. Like I said, every situation is completely unique, and there's definitely not one answer for everyone.
Well, one theme that I think was consistent in your responses to all three of these different topics, and I believe Sasha mentioned it and referenced it as well, is that there's a relentless will and commitment and self-commitment and your pursuit of doing your best and taking advantage of all the resources and coaches and personalities that that you come across. And so I think that's a great takeaway for our players. And we're approaching our 80th minute on the calls, but we do have a couple of questions. Matt, our club president, Andy Scruton, asked a question, and that is, who is your favorite player and who is your favorite coach? And as I know we have a lot of coaches on the call, I'd be curious as to hear the response to the latter question there. But who was your favorite player growing up?
Favorite player that I enjoyed watching growing up? Well, I am an Oldham Athletic fan, so my favorite player growing up was a forward called Andy Ritchie. Diminutive forward, scored goals. I stood on the terraces and watched Oldham Athletic play. I know Andy, being from Sheffield. There were some great games. I remember one actually where we beat Sheffield Wednesday to win the old League Two and pip you for the title. But he was one just because as a young player I aspired to be something like that. I think bigger scheme and a larger scheme. Growing up around Paul Scholes, was from a similar neighbourhood. I always had huge respect for him as a player. He's a little bit older than me, and to watch him and develop and to go on to do some really, really good things. I always have a little affinity to the little ginger, so he was excellent. Coaching wise, Brian Clough, because of how different he was. Groundbreaking. We talk about being different, being pioneering. He certainly was pioneering. So a lot of respect for him. Alex Ferguson, how he managed to corral the class of '92 and how to develop an identity over time. And obviously now as we get there's so many coaches to respect and how they've changed and adapted and evolved the game. So those are some that just from my childhood growing up to respect. And now there's numerous and how Klopp's evolved the game as well, and Zidane's success at Real Madrid, and Guardiola obviously connected with them slightly through Man City and working with Rodolfo Borrell, what he did at Barcelona and what he continues to do. So there's so many great coaches, but I thought I'd reference a couple from my youth there, Andy. So I appreciate that.
And Andy, you're unmuted if you need to make a response to that Sheffield Wednesday crack. So feel free. So we also had another really good question, which is, can you give us one of your favorite dusk memory?
Favorite dusk memory? Whew, so many. Uh, I think, a lot of the memories from dusk were, with the people, the players, and just how different they were, and how unique, but how mature they were. They were, such an interesting group of players who just seemed so worldly. So I know we went on some tours. We went on, the O2s went to Scotland. It was a great trip. We actually went to Stirling University, which Sasha's played at. Fantastic facility. I know the 2000s went to Madrid, and playing in those games and going to some live games. I think you get to know a lot about players when you travel with them and get to kind of see them outside of their comfort zone, or when they're a little bit more relaxed. I see Segundo on here; he was on one of those trips as well. I see him giggling in the background. I think those those can be great experiences and memories that you look back on, and I certainly look back on some of those trips that we did internationally, and even just Pier 40. What a unique place! Like coming from a place outside of New York and going to Pier 40 and just the heat, and all the wetness, or the cold, when the cold comes in, and just seeing how the players just adapted. Nearly getting into fights trying to get your patch of land, and the players backing you up, I think was always quite funny. How the players would come over and back you up as you were trying to remove a bunch of construction workers who would drop some sweaters and were trying to play. And I didn't want to prevent them from having fun, but we also had to get a training session in. So I was always trying to give them a little bit of space. But some of those memories were good. And I'm still, like I say, still connected to the players. Obviously Sasha and some others, and even now, I get a call from a player. Can you help me with a college? I'm always happy to help. I'll come across players in different areas. Even we've had players from Dusk who come to train with NYCFC when we've needed players, and I know that these, Lev, the goalkeeper, we need a keeper, and I know Lev is super reliable. Friends with Alex Rando, who was on the team. So they were buddies. They would come up, and it was great because I knew what you would get with those players. They were reliable. They were hardworking. They'd show up. And they were adaptable. So, I think some great memories for Dust that continue. Obviously being still on the board and still connected to all the coaching staff and some really great people, I still get to see what goes on with the club, and it's great to see the club continue to grow.
Awesome. We also have a question: is what's a typical schedule or weekly schedule for an NYCFC Academy player?
Depends on your age. If you're U12, it's 3 nights a week, local games. We really try to prevent the crazy travel and the time of too much away from home. So that's why a lot of the IDP stuff. So with the U12 age groups, 3 times. It's local, regionalized leagues. It's minimal as much as we can to kind of give them full scope of what needs the child needs. And as we go through the age groups, it becomes more of a commitment. And with the 19s, it's 4 nights a week, and they train late. We train at 8:30 to 10, which, listen, there's no traffic, which is a plus. But let me tell you, it's definitely a strain on these players, and it's definitely a sacrifice. We talk about they sacrifice a lot of their social time, a lot of time driving, but they do it because they believe in it, and for the most part, they benefit from it. So, that with the game, and there's a lot more travel involved with regard to the older age groups. And then, we have some breaks. Summer we have a break, and the winter we have a good month break. But it is, it's a big commitment. I think it's not for everyone. I think some players it's too much for, and some players kind of reap the benefits. But what we have to end up trying to create is a home away from home. So, and that why when we do all these, cultural and character and and the environment things, we have to try and create home from home because they are away from their home and their families quite often. So traveling, we're very fortunate. We have a budget where we can travel on a bus and stay in those hotels. So the players enjoy that aspect and they have a good time. It's just that they're expected obviously to show up, and not just show up and train late, show up, train and work. And I know same with Dusk. I mean, the older age groups as well, they're on the late shift. They're the ones that are waiting. They're the ones that have to get on late because the younger guys. So everyone has to deal with it. I think both clubs have some definitely some commonalities there. It's New York City, You know, we have tons of talent everywhere. We just have no space. But I'd take the talent over space any day.
Well, Matt, we are heading into the 90th minute, so I'm going to let you have the last word. But I want to thank you from the club, from our players and coaches. It's just been fantastic. And so the final word is for you.
Yeah, just, thanks again for having me on, Kevin, and Dusk and the Dusk extended family, all players and coaches. I'm happy to any questions I don't get answered tonight, I'm happy to answer them. Kevin, if you wanted to pass on, my email or mobile, happy to help in any way. Like I say, and I still do help. I just helped a player the other day who was trying to connect with the college, and I knew the college coach, and I was happy to do so. So I hope it was insightful. I hope my Manchester draw was not too repetitive over time. I'm glad Sasha helped jump in and mix things up with some anecdotes and some stories. For me, it's always great to relate to some real life stories and real life people. So I think having people like Sasha and other players who are on this call that hopefully will be you guys in a few years, giving back to the game, giving back to your community, giving back to the club, and continue to grow. And I think during this time, this unique time, I think it's very important that everyone stays connected, and the strength and character of the club you can see in how many people are involved in tonight and the other things that have been going on. So thanks for your time. Appreciate all the support, and stay safe, stay home, and hopefully we'll be back out on the field before too long.
All right, Matt, thank you, and thanks all you Dusk players and coaches for coming on. Have a good night. Be well.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.